Can you believe that workplaces are getting more toxic? You would think that with the advancements made around self awareness, care at work, the advancements and the access to information and behavioral science, that work would be a safer environment. But no, the newsletter Inc.co published in 2025 that workplace hostility is on the rise. And it stated that 1 in 5 employees have seen a rise in employees being mean at work. In America, the political landscape would have had an impact. But here in the UK, 52% of CEOs believe that their company culture is toxic and it is a 10% increase from 2023. So, what's happening? You don't need another training video telling you that culture is strategy for breakfast. We've heard it all before. But what we really need to understand is what's on the menu when the culture is toxic. Because for some, work feels like poor nutrition, terrible taste, and empty calories, using the imagery of food. But it all sounds soul destroying. And that's what toxicity is. And if you're in charge, the question is, are you the one sweeping up the mess and consciously or subconsciously enabling this? Or are you the one creating a healthier workspace? Now, toxic culture isn't just bad vibes. It has real costs on the business, on the people that you know. And the reality is that for managers, the people managers generally are often the ones reinforcing it without even knowing it. And that's where it gets interesting and personal. Today, I'm sharing 5 ways by which you can stop and fix toxic culture. And this is based on research from McKinsey in 2025 that I read as a publication I read in 2025 and various other sources. And it's really going to be a roadmap for doing culture right and not just talking about it. So let's get this out of the way. A toxic workplace isn't just one bad apple, it's the whole blooming orchard. And the word toxic should not be used casually. A toxic culture isn't just about one rude email or someone stealing your mug. It's not just the one off, which you will experience when working with people anyway, but it is that persistent pattern of behavior which makes people feel unsafe, undervalued, or silenced. And that negative behavior spreads like how COVID spread in 2020. And I'm not exaggerating. Scientific research by Falk revealed that rude behavior causes us to be rude to others, and that creates a cycle of rudeness which can escalate. Let's run a quick culture health check. Here are actual research backed indicators of toxicity. So you will know that you are in a toxic culture when one, employees are afraid to speak up. So it's also known as a culture of fear, and there's a lack of psychological safety. And then 2, do as I say, not as I do. So there's inconsistent messaging and leaders preach values, but they don't practice them. So staff will definitely mirror the bad leadership behavior. And then 3, power hoarding. So cliques are formed with selected few, and there's a lot of there's a lot of autocratic decision making, and it can really be annoying. It's even more than annoying. It's actually a culture of decay because things just get from bad to worse. And for people leave faster than you can hire them. And 5 is a blame over learning culture, which actually is one of the worst things you can experience because you're not able to make any mistakes and mistakes are punished. There's a lack of discussion and learning that takes place, and that can really cripple and grip you in fear. I read in a recent People Management article written by Ryan Sylvie, who pointed out that toxicity often shows up in subtle behaviors like constant interruptions in meetings, dismissing new ideas, and not addressing misconduct. And guess what? Searches for toxic workplaces in England just hit a 5-year high. So there's an indication that it is becoming rampant. When all these indicators that I've just shared are true, then the system is broken and it's not just one bad manager. Definitely not just HR. So, according to an article from the Oxford Review shared in 2018, deviant cultures are built over time with misaligned reward systems, inconsistent ethics, a culture of fear and silence, and leaders modeling poor behavior. And as I was researching this, I was reminded of this Vauxhall scandal where the reward systems that existed pushed employers to cheat the testing software, which was a real risk for drivers. You may be thinking, well, we're talking about Volkswagen and maybe other bigger organizations or multinational banks. But no, don't get too comfortable. These patterns happen in the tech startups, councils, everywhere people work. So even charities whose brand is compassion are sometimes getting it wrong. So if you're thinking that, no, this is not going to affect my team, you need to pause and really think. It can happen to your team if it's not checked. So let's get practical. Research shows that toxic cultures can't be fixed by just switching up policies. And so I'll talk through 5 parts on how to fix this. So part one is foundation, and it's about knowing what you're building, redesigning, and why. The biggest threat to a healthy work culture is vagueness. You can't fix what you cannot define. And so let's start with your foundation. Every manager needs to be crystal clear on what the team is trying to achieve. That's the objectives, why it matters, which is the meaning behind that, how the work is done, the process, and who does what, which is around the structure, as well as what drives how we behave when we are working or whilst we are delivering this. And this is so important. According to McKinsey's 2025 research, which I'll be referring to a lot in this video, organizations need more than just new org charts. They actually need alignment, rewired workflows, and meaningful investment in their people. So be clear on what you want to build, what you want to take down, or what you want to change. Start with a broad plan that has clarity. And if you want, and if you can, get HR support, look for external consultants or the right managers and people to get this right. So in simple terms, it starts with having a clear business organizational strategy. Next is to spell out the behaviors you need. We need to name it to tame it. McKinsey research proves that successful cultures align strategy and culture with behaviors. So when they are in sync, teams do thrive. For example, you can run surveys, like real surveys, keep them anonymous, and be specific on what you're trying to achieve, followed by action. We assume that people know how to behave, but when values are vague, behavior gets messy. So spell it out and be clear on expected behaviors. So for example, you can say that we collaborate across silos, we give feedback directly, not passively, passive aggressively. We don't interrupt in meetings, and we don't undermine peers to look good. I mean, you can really spell it out. And this is why companies like Netflix and I think Microsoft literally write down the behaviors that they want, and you should too. So moving on to part 3, which touches on accountability and practice. Newsflash. Culture does not just happen. This is not just a one-time fix. It's a series of micro decisions made every single day. And so culture cannot be built in one away day. It's built in moments. Of course, they all lend to it, but it's built in moments on how we listen, how we correct people, how we praise people. And culture is a reflection of what leaders allow, what they ignore, or what they model. And it's not always the loud exhibition of behavior, whether it's shouting in an office to know that you're in a toxic workspace, but it can also be all these subtle behaviors that also lend to that. And the Oxford Review adds that toxic cultures often start when performance and reward systems aligned with value. So you will say that you value integrity, but then you're rewarding the speed by which someone delivers work at any cost. And that's a breeding ground for ethical shortcuts. And the review calls this automated situational norms. And so these are unconscious habits based on what's been normalized. So if people are seeing poor behavior go unchecked, it becomes the standard. It's kind of making the same point I made before from the Folks research around rude behavior. Also, according to McKinsey, organizations that treat redesign and culture as ongoing capabilities, not just emergency measures, are winning. 63% of those who followed new redesign principles actually met performance targets. So it's a constant review of strategy and foundations and holding others accountable. Ellen DeGeneres, for example, I'm sure many of you will know who I'm describing, but she was a beloved celebrity on screen, but off screen, there were allegations of racism, fear based leadership, people not being able to take maternity or bereavement leave. She eventually took ownership, but the damage was done. So it's important to take that accountability necessary, especially when you are a manager or leader. People management article by Rian Sylvie stated that the number one tool to uncover toxicity, do you know what it is? It is self-reflection. So it's not another pizza party, it's not another staff meeting. And you need to ask yourself this question, which is this an environment where people feel psychologically safe to speak up, even when it's hard? And here's the real test. Are you willing to hold yourself and your team accountable to those behaviors? Can you do that for your own team? I say this because I've worked with so many senior management teams and leaders, and as a group, sometimes the individuals find it difficult to hold a mirror up to say, hey, this behavior is not right. We need to check this. Or I'm seeing you do this. You need to change this. It's very easy for them to correct others, but within the group, they find it difficult to do that. And that needs to change. Practice of accountability and self-reflection comes in various forms as well. So it's about having those regular team check-ins. 360 feedback loops are very helpful. Anonymous service, which I've already mentioned, and suggestion forms. Talking about accountability is looking at the practices, looking at the systems that you have and the repeated behaviors and habits that would look at the work culture to make it better. And the McKinsey research share that it's important to have those difficult or necessary conversations. And you can do that by creating simulations or spaces to test the channel of healthy disagreement. So that's very interesting, meaning that you can actually practice saying no. And by doing that, you create the habit of being able to have healthy disagreements and practicing conflicts with humanity. It's also important to reward team members who challenge with respect. Please note this is rewarding people who challenge with respect. We're not going to be rewarding people who are just challenging for the sake of challenging, but it has to be done in the context, in a very clear context. Again, going back to the defining the behaviors in a context of right behaviors, which includes respect. This is where as HR, we'll be looking at policies. Now, this is where the policy can come in play to look at policies around recruitment, reward, and, performance management. For part 4, on a similar theme to behavior, is the subject of communication, because that snarky eye roll in a meeting, it sends a louder message than a strategy document. A people management article written by Rian Sylvie talks about how leaders are either encouraging that toxic behavior or they might be fighting it and failing sometimes in the process, and that there's no neutral. And it's important to really think it through, that in a toxic culture, it takes a lot to be able to fight it. And for many, they actually succumb to it and they become part of it. So it takes a lot more than one person to make the change, and it requires the village. And it is emphasizing the point I made earlier around what you see, you tend to mimic what you see, and that spreads across to the whole team in terms of the modeling of behavior. And so moving on from the nonverbal cues to the written communication, let's not be naive. When things go wrong, then what do we look out for? We look for the evidence. We look for what the supporting information. And so the truth is normally sits on what can be backed up. And documentation is not just a legal fallback, it's a leadership tool. And why is it important? This is where you're documenting and publishing your team norms. You are keeping record of meeting notes. You are you're recording performance conversations, and you document culture action plans. And so for business leaders and managers, you need to make space for your one-to-ones, for the Slack threads, respond to that. You need to attend the manager huddles. Don't ghost your team and then act shocked when trust erodes. All these communication channels will let you know what is happening within teams and build evidence so actions can be taken to uphold the right culture. The last part 5, is about training and developing habits that last. So when it comes to training, don't just hand over a PowerPoint or PDF document and hope for the best. The new golden rules of redesign emphasizes the upskilling, that you need to upskill people managers to manage change, culture, and performance. Culture is about the habits that we create, and we need to train managers on building these habits. Actually need to put in a bit more effort to train and build managers in these habits. So managers need onboarding and development focused training, and needs to be looked at as a daily fitness plan or daily behavioral fitness plan. And those healthy habits look like blocking lunch in calendars and protecting it, normalizing finishing work on time and not answering calls on your days off. So generally making sure that you're getting your off time, your rest, your breaks, good sleep, and even points for reflection. And according to the Oxford Review, good organizational habits lead to better performance, lower stress, and fewer ethical lapses. Instead of just telling people you need to be able to manage your time, you need to show them how to do that. That looks like building a realistic to do list, prioritizing impact over being busy, designing your day around focus time and not just frantic multitasking. Twist and focusing on managers that they don't just become better leaders, they become the protectors of well-being, productivity, and trust. And they end up modeling the right behaviors that have that positive influence on the team members. Another way of saying this is that you are saving the manager or saving you yourself, and then giving your team the tools to be able to also save themselves. Look, being a people manager is hard, and I've said this before. You're dealing with politics, you're juggling deliverables, and sometimes it feels like you're not doing enough. But if you care about the humans in your orbit, in your team, you want your team to thrive and not just survive. And culture is where it starts. It's specific to CEOs, business leaders, because having a great place to work doesn't just happen by accident. It happens by breaking those toxic habits, replacing them with honest human systems, real systems. Culture should be our breakfast, it should be our lunch, it should be in every conversations, in how we interact with each other. It should be in every policy, and it should be in every email sent. So it's the everyday habits. And most organizations normally look at culture seriously after there's been a scandal. But by then the trust is gone. So whether you are managing 5 people or 500, you can start the turnaround today. And no, you're not going to have the change overnight, but culture is a long game, and you get to choose if you want to play offense or damage control. So what will you do differently tomorrow? Like, comment, and share this with another manager who needs to hear it. And hey, if you're navigating this in real time and you want support, join the community or reach out through the links shared below, because real leadership is not a solo sport. Thanks for watching.